14th century art was packed with a great deal of transformation and confusion. The period was both a developing and revolutionary time, where the population of Europe as a whole was making great improvement in their technology, arts, and the politics. However, the development in the 14th century didn't move as fast as people would have liked, and this was due to several natural and social disasters which occurred over that time period. A slowdown occurred in the agriculture known as the Little Ice Age, a climactic cooling which saw temperatures drop, settlements cut off, and the crops fail. To add to all of the period were the Black Death which caused by the bubonic plague killed nearly half of the population of Europe through successive waves. The period of the 14th century art was the bridging period between the Middle Ages or medieval period and the Renaissance or early modern period. The medieval arts was the art by Gothic style, and material arts for this examples are sculptured, illuminated manuscripts, stained glass, metalworks, frescoes, and textiles. Whereas the Romanesque art was developed around the growth of the Gothic art, which was during the 10th century. This was also in union with the growth of the monastic system in the Western Europe. The initial development style was in France, and it spread to Spain, England, Flanders, Germany, Italy, and then elsewhere. It became the first medieval style which was found all of Europe. However, each region put a different spin on the art and style. The term Gothic is a very universal term. It really depends on the time, place, or the Gothic that was used. The actual term originated with the Gothic architecture that develops around in France with the rebuilding of the Abbey Church of St. Denis in 1137. The Renaissance art form started in Italy, and it all came about through new experiments with perspective and a transformed focus on painting and the classical works of art. There have been many talented, unique, and influential artists in this bridging period between medieval and the Renaissance that will forever be a part of a great period in Europe's history and the world. There are many different techniques, upbringing, style, and changes through the different artwork for the region and the time within the 14th century. As we look back on this period, the artwork was so great and unique in its own right. Robert Campin was probably one of the most well-known Flemish painters, with an unknown master of Flamel. He was one of the founders of the New Realism in the north, with him being a great reformer in early Netherlands painting. Campin was born in 1375 at Valenciennes, which is in the north of France. The first piece on record for Campin in 1406 was when he became a free master of the Tournai. He spent the next 4 years of his life there. He finally received citizenship in the year of 1410. Campin built quite a reputation for himself. With this involved in the city, he was then elected as the Dean of the Painters Guild in 1423 and chosen as one of the 3 city councillors, the Tournai. He retained this position for over 5 years. Paolo Uccello was born in 1397 in Florence. Records state that Uccello used to stay late into the night trying to figure out how to get a particular disappearing point. He was very interested in the perspective of art. He used these perspective art to be able to create deep feelings in his paintings, along with the telling of different stories. Uccello's artwork has made him very well known all over the world, with art enthusiasts, especially the 3 paintings that demonstrated the Battle of San Romano. Many people of his time were changing and advancing into classical art, whereas Uccello was still working in the Gothic tradition, where he was focusing on the colour and the spectacles. His different style as a characteristic artist didn't have many people favour his work. Another Flemish painter was that of Roger van der Weyden. Van der Weyden was born in 1399 in Tournai, Belgium. His work was mainly focused on religious triptychs, altarpieces, and commissioned single and the diptych portraits. Van der Weyden lived a very normal life, with not a lot of big events happening. However, he was a highly successful international. Van der Weyden's work was found in Italy and Spain, but no records indicate how the work actually made it there. Van der Weyden's other famous paintings are Philip the Good, Netherlandish nobility, and the foreign princes. Fra Angelico, born Guido di Petre in 1395 in Italy and died in 1455 in Rome. Angelico was a very talented and unique unique painter. In the early Italian Renaissance, he was described by Vasari as being a rare and perfect talent. Angelico was a highly professional artist who kept updated with all the developments that happened in the Florentine art. His early years of training are unknown, but we do know he started off his career by illuminator of missals and other religious books. Angelico was an artist of many talents, and he produced many masterpieces. However, the most well-known work of was the frescoes, which decorate the San Marco convent in Florence. On December 21, 1401, Massachico was born. Although his original name was Tommaso di Ser Giovanni di Simone, the name Massachico came from a short version of Masso, which is short for Tommaso. Massachico was known as the best painter of his generation because of his ability to be able to show light, like figures and the movement, as well as the ability to recreate three-dimensionality. He was the first painter of the Quattrocento period of the Italian Renaissance. Massachico passed away at an early age of 26 by an unknown cause. Even though he had a short career, he still was able to have great influence on other artists of his time. His art was a lot different than other artists of his time. He was the first person to use linear perspective and disappearing points in his painting. Massachico was one of the few who moved away from the international Gothic style and moved more towards a naturalistic mode. In the town of Borel, Florence, Petrus Christos was born in 1410. He started painting at an early age in a workshop run by Jean van Eyck in his hometown of Borel. Christos learnt and practiced painting in a creative manner and became a well-known Flemisk painter. Christos became a free master and he also received his citizenship from the town in 1444. For the majority of his life he lived in Bruges until he passed away in either 1472 or 1473. The early records of Christos's work was when he helped complete the Rothschild's Madonna, which was started by Jean van Eyck. His artwork showed great accuracy of form and advanced version of aerial and linear view. Florence also gave birth to yet another great artist, Piero della Francesca. He was born in either 1416 or 1417 in San Spircolo, the Republic of Florence, Italy. Where he was alive, he had a little influence on the art of his time. However, it was until he passed and many years after that in the 20th century that he was considered to have been a key contributor to the Italian Renaissance. Francesca was a calm and controlled painter who enjoyed investigating the viewpoints. Francesca's best-known works are the fresco cycle, the Legend of the True Cross, and the diptych portrait of Federico da Montefeltro, Duke of Urbino, and his consort. Giovanni Bellini came from a well-known painting family where his father was a pupil of one of the leading 15th century Gothic revival artists. He was born in 1426 in Venice, Italy. Not a lot is known of his early childhood, but it is believed Giovanni and his brother would have trained at their father's workshop. In his earlier paintings, you can see that Giovanni worked with tempera, combining a plain and rigid style with a depth of religious feeling and a gentle humanity. Giovanni was able to achieve a unique religious and emotional unity of expression in his later years. With his method of using oil paint brought a very individual style to all of his artwork. His ability to change the layering of colours made him a great and very unique artist. He brought to the painting a new degree of realism, a new wealth of subject matter, and a new sensuousness in form and colour. In 1440 Germany, Hans Melnick was born in Solagenstadt, a village near Frankfurt. He was known for being a very graceful, charming, and technically brilliant painter. Melnick was awarded a citizen of Bruges in Lodance. In his early years of training, Melnick trained at the Collège. Before Melnick started with the Painters Guild at Bruges, he was an apprentice at Roger van der Weyden's workshop in Brussels. Melnick work showed a high standard of great technical ability and graphic complexity in his artwork. In almost all of his paintings, it's hard to find a single imperfection, with three being little change or development in his stylistic. Sandro Botticelli was born in the era of the Italian Renaissance period. Botticelli, who is known as Sandro, was born in Florence in 1445, where he spent his life. After he entered his teenage years, he got an apprenticeship as a goldsmith. A period of time had passed, and Sandro found a love for painting and decided to ask his father if he could study painting. Sandro was chosen as an apprentice painter, which gave him the opportunity to study under the well-known Fra Filippo Lipini. As Sandro learnt more and more about the art of painting, a similar style as Lipini, he was well known for. The colour in which Lippi used in the church altarpieces was a big part of how people remember him today. As time went on, Sandro was developing many skills, especially the skill of showing affectionate expressions in the subject face and using decorative details. By the time he was 15, he had built up his skill standard as a gifted artist and was able to open his own workshop of his artwork. Leonardo da Vinci was born in 1452 in the country of Italy. He spent his early painting life along with training in a workshop of Andrea di Borrocino in Florence. Da Vinci is known for his captivating personality and his scientific contributions to the history of Western art. Da Vinci was a person who always looked and tried to understand and found out anything and everything. Through his whole career, Da Vinci was always observing, experimenting, and creating. However, the way in which he chose to record his findings was interesting. He simply drew everything he found. As we look back at Da Vinci's art, there is little completed work, but with his way of recording his ideas, he left a great deal of drawings of his ideas. He lived most of his life in Florence and Milan, but his last few years were spent in Rome and in France before he passed in 1519. After his passing, he was still making an impact to the life of inspired young and old artists and scientists. In 1475, Italy, one of the greatest artists of all time, was born, this being Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. Michelangelo was an Italian sculptor, painter, architect, poet, and engineer of the High Renaissance who applied his influence on the development of the Western art. Michelangelo was considered, and is still considered, one of the greatest living artists of his time, as it was displayed after his passing in 1564, when his work was still having an influence of the art of people then and still to this day, with his work being among the most famous in existence. He was an artist that had it all. His input into every field was extraordinary, as he was the best documented artist in the 16th century. Michelangelo's most influential works in fresco in the history of Western art, the scenes from the Genesis of the ceiling and the Last Judgment on the altar wall of the Sistine Chapel in Rome. Michelangelo passed away in 1564, but he will forever be known around the world as an outstanding artist to the Western world. Matthias Grunwald was born in either the 1470 or 1480 in the city of Wolfsburg, Germany. Grunwald was known for being one of the greatest German painters of his age, with his work on the religious themes and expressiveness used through his colour and agitated line use is really what made him so special and great. Grunwald's work will always go down in history as he passed away in 1528. His work was still a great influence in the era of that time. In 1483, in Italy, Raffaello Sanzio was born into a well-known family of the arts. His father was a painter at the court of Federico da Montefeltro. Sanzio was one of the people who defined the High Renaissance style in the central Italy. He was an Italian Renaissance painter, architect, and designer. With his father's influence and many around him, like his older colleagues, Leonardo and Michelangelo, who helped define the Renaissance style, he was always being taught many different techniques to painting. His passing came as a shock to a lot of people, as he died when his son was only 11 years old in 1520. He will be forever known for his sweet personality and extraordinary talents and ambitions. In a small town on Emilia, in 1490, Correggio was born. He lived his whole life there until he died in 1530. Most of his life he worked in local centres, where he was one of the most sophisticated artists of that time. As history tells us, there wasn't a lot documented of Correggio, so it's hard to tell accurately where he received his early artistic education. He probably was trained by his painter uncle, Lorenzo Algieri. However, it's said that a lot of his inspiration came from Mantegna. Correggio's first work that is documented is the version of St. Francis in 1514 or 1515, Geldemundageri in Dresden, commissioned by the church. Correggio's career, he saw strong influence from the well-known artists around him at the time or the place. Most of Correggio's paintings are altarpieces and small religious works that are often showing compassion and intimate in feeling. When looking back on this time period within the European culture, art played a big role in the changing, improving and development of that era. The 14th century art also had a great influence on the rest of the world, with not only its art but also its artists and their style. Still to this day, the 14th and 15th century art was the large breakthrough or the bridging period between the Middle Ages or medieval periods and the Renaissance or early modern period. European art is arranged into a number of stylistic periods, which historically overlaps each other as different styles flourished into different areas. While most art over the past 200 years have been produced without reference to religion, a particularly imperial style, European art was often influenced by politics or one kind or another.